Let's be honest, building Jinwoo and soul leveling Rise isn't the easiest thing to do. You have so many things to consider, from your weapon choices to your skill choices, from your stats and blessing stones, and don't get me started on artifacts. These are so complicated, so let me try to simplify things for you. I want to make this as easy as possible, that way you can maximize on your damage, and also so you don't waste your resources since, well, we all know how hard those are to get. And again, as a huge appreciation for all the support we've been receiving so far, I am completely speechless. We've gone from 40,000 to 46,000 in a matter of 2 days. I truly appreciate it. So we are doing another $100 giveaway, all if you were going to leave me broke at this rate. Our last winner was Cunning Blows, so a huge congrats to them. The $100 can either be to the Google Play or Apple App Store, or just sent you directly. It is totally your choice. All you need to do to enter is drop a comment on this video, be subscribed to the channel for updates to see if you've won, and drop a like to show your support. Again, thank you so much everyone, I do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, go to the supporter link down below. Make sure to support us on Netmarble's website. That way we can all get some free rewards, and I'll be sure to give back anything that Netmarble provides me, so I can't wait to see what the devs give us. We're rank number 5 currently, so let's see if we can boost our ranks and get that number 1 spot. So let's go ahead and jump into Jinwoo and look at his stats. As you can see, I went with the strength route, with a little bit of perception. This is the ideal loadout. That's because of the strength stat. It directly affects our attack, meaning we will deal more damage. Basically everything related to Jinwoo, from his skills as you can see here, scale off his attack. Same with the weapons. You can see their weapon skills if we go into them. Deal a percentage of the attack that Jinwoo has. That's why attack is so important. You want to maximize on it as much as possible. I know some of you might say, well, agility is very important because we want to maximize our crit as well. Well, I wouldn't say that's true. If we go to my stats, my artifacts are very unoptimized. They are not the best ones you can use, and I'm already at 46% crit, which means if I were to advance my crit stat, which is agility, I would hit the 50% crit wall, meaning I'll be wasting the stat points. Sure, I'll be getting some crit damage, as that stat does provide crit damage as well, as you see here. Agility increases crit rate and damage, but that still would not be optimal again for the reasons I just said, which is exactly why we put in stats into perception, because perception is actually a stat we need some points into. What perception basically does is it increases your minimum damage dealt to enemies based on your precision increase. As you can see, my precision stat is at 85%, and that's arguably your goal. You want to get between 80 to 85% for precision. It doesn't need to be exactly spot on, but this should be your goal. That's why my perception stat is only at 70. Because my weapons do provide a lot of precision. As you advance up your weapons, you get precision added on. You can see an A3 weapon, so 3 advancements, provides 3000 precision, where an A4 weapon provides 3500. Your SR weapons as well do provide precision, a bit less, but still it does stack on. 1200 for an A2, and 1450 for an A3, so be sure to take note of all these numbers. If you are lacking some SSRs that are advanced, this stat will need to be a bit higher. Mine is a little bit low, just because I have 2 A4 weapons, meaning they provide a lot of precision to my stats. Now on the topic of stats, artifacts are so important, and I want to tell you this right now. Artifacts are not easy to get, and by easy to get I'm just referring to good artifacts with decent stats. It is not an easy task. I've just started to get decent artifacts. One thing I do want to mention about this artifact here is that this top stat will never change. So additional attack is good for Jinwoo, but what you actually want is attack percentage. So ideally, if you had the choice, you would go for an artifact with the attack percent damage bonus here, but you can't do that with gloves. If you didn't notice, it is locked to additional attack for all your glove artifacts. Let me just show you. You can see here, all of them provide additional attack, again attack. Doesn't matter the rarity, doesn't matter what glove. They all provide attack, and no, don't worry, I'm not just picking ones that have attack. See there? Every single one of them provide attack, and that's the same for many of our artifacts. Armor as well is the same. I'll just quickly show you that. Just so you do note for the future, you can see they all provide additional defense. Now, the artifacts that don't have this applied to them will be your helmet. You can pick what stats you want. Obviously, you don't want to go for HP. Like I said earlier, my artifacts are not optimal right now. Ideally, you want to find one with attack. There we go. So an attack percent bonus. And the reason why you want to go for percentage bonuses is that once you reach around the level 60 to 55 mark, that's when you want to switch. The percentage bonuses will be higher than the flat stat bonus amounts, so do take note of that. Although the flat stats aren't bad, percentages are your friend in the late game, and a lot of you are probably closing into that level 50 to 60 mark, so make sure you focus on percentages, don't go for flat stats. That'll net you a greater damage bonus. So the artifacts that do have their stats change will be boots, rings, bracelets, and helmets. Those 4 artifacts will have different stats to the main stat bonus here, and the reason why that's important is as you do enhance them, this stat will be guaranteed to go up. That's why it's so important. Whereas these stats here, well, it's a gamble. You can see +1 and +1 here on stats I arguably do not want to have on Jinwoo. That's why it's important to have your main stat the correct ones. So if we go to my ring, for example, you can see one with attack percentage. That's exactly what we want. The amount is increasing per enhancement we have. That is the ideal way to do it. And with artifacts, I recommend one thing: do not waste your enhancements. I am pay to win, so I have a ton of them. 3,300 for the base enhancement, so I don't need that many. So I don't exactly need to be efficient. That's why for my initial artifacts, I just picked whatever sounded good, so don't do that. You should be as efficient as possible. Do as I say and not as I do, of course. But as you can see, I'm starting to find better artifacts. That's my goal. It's not easy to do. This is literally the best one I have. So again, don't fret if you don't find a good artifact. It takes some time, so don't worry. Now I want to continue with the set bonuses. So ideally for Jinwoo, you want to have either the toughness set or also this set here. Let me quickly go to change. The set that provides the arm bonus, a 5% attack buff, which does directly influence every single one of Jinwoo's damage sources. As I mentioned earlier, his skills and weapon skills all scale off attack. That's why you want to get as much of this stat as possible. And also the force set effect is very good, ignoring 15% of the target's defense, which is basically the support skill of some of our hunters like Choi. That's why it's so good. You get the bonus damage in from ignoring their defense, so a very good stat. Same with toughness, like I mentioned earlier, crit rate and crit damage, exactly what you want to see. But again, do note with your artifact stats. Let me show you for example. I want to go to my Jinwoo stats, look at his crit rate, 46%, and let me quickly swap out this armor. I want to lose this buff here, the crit rate increased by 8%. Let's change it to something random, so let's go for this one. And if we look at Jinwoo stats, you can see my crit rate was not affected. It is still at 46%. That's because the set bonuses apply on top of this bonus here. You can see this in effect of our weapons. If I go to the scythe and I go down here, you can see the A1 bonus of our scythe provides a crit rate bonus of 25%. This pushes our cap higher, so it doesn't directly affect this bonus here, including our artifact set. So I'll show you again. I'm going to swap in a toughness set armor. That way we can properly see how this works. It doesn't have to be a good artifact, it'll provide the set bonus regardless, so we'll see there. And if we go back to our stats, the rate has not changed, even though the artifact provides you bonuses, which is exactly why you want to optimize your stats. If I went with an armor that provided too much crit, let's go for this one here, and we go back to our stats, you'll see here, we're at the 50% cap. So any additional artifacts I put on with additional crit, because if they provide more crit than this figure, I'm basically losing out on potential damage. So I'd rather get attack, for example, not artifact, which is exactly what I need to do. And that's exactly why artifacts are so hard to get, because you want to be as optimal as possible. You don't want to go for too much crit as I outlined, and you want to go for the right stats. So with Jinwoo, you want to go for crit rate, again meeting that 50% cap. You want to go for crit damage, you want to go for attack increase at the percentage mark, of course, and also defense pen isn't bad as well. Those are probably the ones you want to go for. That'll net you the biggest bonus. And when it comes to sets, like I mentioned earlier, the toughness set and the arm set are very good. And when it comes to your accessories, well, the expert set is good, but do note with sets like this, these are generally better. For battles that do take a very long time, you basically will need 2 minutes for these to fully stack, whereas another artifact here, like the Executioner, if you had the force set effect, you would basically instantly get a 20% damage increase once the enemy does reach 70% HP, so you will get this set effect much faster than this one here, but at the end of the day, they do all generally balance out. It just depends what you're doing. If you're speedrunning, this is probably not the best set. This one will probably be better. But again, as long as you go for a solid artifact set, you'll be good to go. I do have an artifact video, so do check that out, going over the best artifacts for Jinwoo. This is just giving you a general sense of what to do. Now, when it comes to skills, things are very easy to cover. I'll go over the best ones to use and give you some general tips. The first thing I do want to mention is that with skills, if you see this icon here, and if you see this one as well, they represent different things. So any skill with this icon means you can hold the skill down to get a bonus effect. So if you haven't been doing this already, go ahead and try. Hold down the button for the skill once you activate it. It'll provide an additional effect or a charge period. And this icon here just represents that this skill can counter. Just so you know, it's like a parry icon as we see there. So that's what it does. As you can see, it provides a counter as listed here. So that's exactly what this means. Now, the same thing does apply to our weapons. You can see with Scythe, once I go to the skills, it has the same effect. Once you hold down this button, the skill will deal more damage and the animation will change. It'll basically do more slashes, dealing more damage, so it's an absolute must. I learned this a little bit late myself, so don't worry if that's new to you as well. It's a feature in the game, and some weapons like Westwind, they don't show the icon. I think that's probably a glitch. If you hold down the skill for Westwind, it does charge. So again, the same principle does apply. And I guess with Grimoire, the same applies as well. You don't need to hold down the skill button, but it does take a few seconds to activate. Let me just show you here with the skill. So don't move out of the skill, otherwise it won't fully resolve. Just so you know, it is something people do actually miss. And something people do miss is that you can actually level up your weapon skills. So you can go here, level them up, they will deal more damage. So if you haven't done so already, do so. You'll deal a little bit more damage. They'll provide bonuses, of course. For some weapons, you probably don't want to worry about the basic attack and core attack. Sometimes we use weapons just for their skills, that being the main one here, so don't go too ham on the basic attacks. And actually, speaking of leveling up your skills, one thing I strongly recommend against is leveling up certain skills. If we go to the skill page and I go down here, with the QTE skills, there's really no reason to level these up, especially a skill like Shadow Step. Let me show you. If we go and level it up, you can see it only provides a 10% damage increase. The other effects aren't changed at all, so why would you want to do this? You can see at the max level, it only provides a 90% damage increase. Totally not worth it. Don't waste these resources. They are not easy to come by. Ideally, you want to go for the main damage dealing skills, including your ultimate, of course. This deals so much damage, and as you level it up, obviously, it deals even more and more damage, so ideally go with those. These QTE skills do not get any bonuses. They only get very minor damage increases, so again, not ideal. You want to go for skills that actually deal damage, like Mutilate, for example. If we go and level it up, you can see the damage increases are much higher. The same applies to Death Stance, for example, and other skills like Vital Strike. So these are the skills you want to actually level up. They provide substantial damage bonuses. Again, your ulti should come first, of course. That'll be your bulk damage source. But when it comes to your actual skill choice, it just depends on the enemies you're facing. Let me go to the game modes and go to Gates, for example. I want to hop into here. I'll probably have a battle let me actually rescan, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and look at this gate here. As you can see, the boss passives is exactly what you want to look for. You want to see if it has a break dodge. That means you can break the enemy, which is obviously vital to dealing more damage. You also want to look at their passives. So if they're strong against a certain element, you want to avoid using runes for those, again depending on the skill. Sometimes it won't matter. And obviously you want to look at the recommended element. If you have a water skill, it'll obviously deal 50% more damage, which is exactly what you want to see. So with skills, the main considerations to make is, do they have a break dodge, and do you have skills that are weaker to a certain element? And also, what you want to do is look at if the boss you're facing doesn't really have an elemental type advantage you have for skills. That way you can focus on your weapon damage and go with skills that provide buffs. Let me show you that for example. If we go back to our skills, we have skills that do provide buffs, such as Cutting Rush. It provides a 7% crit rate increase, which is what we want to see to boost our damage. I would say this would oftentimes be better than just going for a skill that deals more damage. Again, it depends on what you're doing. So if you are facing a boss that does have a break dodge, you want to go for Death Stance, for example, providing heavy break. But the absolute best skill is called literally Armor Break. It provides the highest break amount, Almighty Break, and it is a skill you'd have to charge up, so take note of that. These two breaks are probably your best break sources. Same with Multi-Strike, it provides medium break and it's very easy to get off. So 1, 2, 3, these are your break skills. They also deal fine damage, so don't worry there. When it comes to mobbing, obviously Death Stance is good. It has that AoE, which I'll show you here. But the number one AoE mobbing skill is going to be Commander's Touch. This skill is so good, especially with this rune here. It sucks in all the enemies, dealing a bunch of AoE damage, and also multiplying depending on how many targets there are, up to 10 of course. So this skill is so good. So ideally these are the two you want to go for, and when it comes to just raw damage dealing skills, I would say Vital Strike, Mutilate, and also Vertical Arts are your best bets. The better the runes you have for them, obviously the better damage you'll deal, and they also have a few elements you can go for as well, especially Vertical Arts has a bunch of elements, so that's a very good thing. And Crushing Blow, this is one of the best skills in my opinion, and totally ignore this. I haven't been playing for 8 hours, I promise. I've just had the game open, so don't worry. But with Crushing Blow, the Dark Rune version is so good. This will literally carry you. It provides a weak break, sure, but when you do counter the enemy's attack, it provides a heavy break, and it also stuns the enemy upon a successful counter attack. So you stun the enemy for 3 seconds when to counter. You also basically avoid any damage they would have done. This basically acts as a universal dodge. Such a good skill. Break, stunning, dodging the enemy's attack. This is one of my favorite skills, so do give this a try. It'll honestly carry you depending on how good you are dodging. One of the best skills in my opinion. Now going back to the main menu, we've covered stats so far. We've also covered our skills and artifacts. The next thing we should logically cover is weapons. Now weapons really do depend on what you have. Do not sleep on SR weapons. We have Westwind that is fantastic for mobbing and also dealing a ton of damage. When paired with a skill like Commander's Touch, it is so good with the skill it has. The Orb of Avarice is another fantastic weapon we have. It is SR, but it is probably the best fire weapon in the game. I know we have this weapon here, the Vulcan's Rage, but honestly, you won't want to be pulling for this. Just to get the Fire Elemental, you'll have multiple dupes of the Orb of Avarice, so inherently this will deal more damage for you. And other weapons that are fantastic as well, I want to direct you to the Lustrous Dragon Sword. You will have dupes of this weapon, so it'll arrive with the advancement bonuses, meaning it's a fantastic weapon to use. And another light weapon you should be using and not be sleeping on is the longbow here. It is fantastic for damage. It is a great light elemental weapon. You will use this on Igris early on if you do need it. So again, fantastic. SR weapons are not ones you want to sleep on, especially if you have multiple dupes for them. Just because they are an SSR doesn't mean they're weak. They have lots of potential, but when it comes to your SR weapons, with Plum, you always want to pair with a dark weapon like Moon Shadow or the Scythe, but that's just for optimal damage output. You can use Plum even if the enemy does have a dark elemental buff. You can pair with weapons like the Huntsman or the Grimoire, because Plum as a weapon does provide bonuses to your crit, as you see here, including your attack, making it a fantastic weapon to use. Arguably one of the best weapons in this game, especially at the A5 level, providing instant stacks, meaning you'll start out very strong. So Plum is a fantastic weapon. Grimoire as well, providing that freeze which helps you survive if you're having troubles with that, on top of the buff it provides to frozen enemies. Again, fantastic weapons overall. And Huntsman is great for those enemies with the dark buff that are weak to light. This is exactly what you want to use. It provides break as well, so fantastic overall. So don't worry too much about your weapon combinations. Overall, all weapons do work with each other. You just have to make sure you're focused on the elemental weaknesses. That's where the bulk of your damage does come from. In terms of getting the buff or the reduction, I can tell you right now from experience, fighting an enemy that's strong against dark, but weak against fire, my level 40 Orb of Avarice will deal more damage than my level 90 Plum, so that's something you want to take note of. It is very important. Elemental effects in soul leveling Rise are huge, so always make sure you're on the right side of the elements. Now that we've gone over weapons, we can jump into Blessing Stones. I know for a fact not many of you have a bunch of Blessing Stones available. They are a little bit hard to get, so just quickly reviewing what you should look at. When it comes to Blessing Stones, I wouldn't say there's one best one you should be using. Obviously, the weakness section is very good. You do get a bonus to elemental weaknesses. Your damage does get an increase to any targets that have elemental weaknesses, so it is one of the better ones I use. Again, like I mentioned earlier, optimizing your weapons or skills to have the proper elements, getting the bonus from the elements, so this will have a direct effect to your damage. One I do always recommend you using is the daily quest completion. If you're fighting enemies you know you might have a chance of dying for, this is honestly so good for survivability. It's probably one of the better ones we have, including the tenacity one as well. It isn't that great. The damage taken only decreases by 20% when you have 30% or less of your health, so you're probably going to die anyways if you need this. Not the best, but is one you can use if you're desperate. Though this one here, you're able to dash one more time, so this will let you get off more extreme evasions. Camouflage isn't too bad for avoiding the enemy. Basically, if you take 5% or more of your max HP in terms of damage, you go camouflage for 3 seconds and you cover some HP. Not bad, but obviously not one you want to use if you want more damage. Pulverize is fairly decent if you're fighting against enemies that do provide break pretty often, so if you're breaking them all the time, you want this. The effects you have that apply break increase by 12%, including your damage as well, so this is honestly pretty huge. Monarch's domain is definitely interesting, increasing your shadow's damage. Give it a try, it might honestly help you out early on, but again, ones like the blessing here, only providing a 4% HP increase, it probably isn't ideal to use on Jinwoo. You want to go for something that applies attack. This one isn't too bad, an 8% attack increase. And Bloodlust as well, it's fairly decent, decreasing the target's defense, but again, when it comes to these blessing stones, if you want to go for damage, just go for damage dealing ones, like this one here. Although your dash cooldown is increased, with Boss Slayer, you're dealing more damage to the bosses. 15% is a substantial figure, so don't sleep on this one. With artifacts, it's tough to get the ones you want, but over time you will. Just go for ones that have glaringly good stats, or like the daily quest which I mentioned before, providing you with substantial survivability. You do get 4 slots at level 70, so you have lots of options to choose from. So yeah, I do hope this helped. I wanted to give a quick overview of basically every aspect when it comes to Jinwoo. When it comes to hunters, that is more complicated. I will save that for another video. But in short, if you are versing an enemy, you want to go for hunters that do provide break. So Jinwoo, for example, provides medium break. Jinwoo provides medium break as well. Same with Jinho, providing medium break. Or if you want to go for damage, you can use hunters like Cha. They provide increased effects, so 12% to your crit rate and damage. Or Min, for example, they provide a 15% damage increase to the enemies. So again, lots to choose from, it just depends on what you're doing. That's the main thing I want to highlight in this video. All the skills you choose, the blessing stones, your weapons, your artifacts, they just depend on what you're doing, depending on if you're mobbing, facing a boss with the break dodge, fighting an enemy with the elemental weakness. You want to always try to optimize yourself, that way you deal the most damage possible. So if you enjoyed, drop a like, be sure to subscribe for more Soul Leveling Rise content like this. That is all I had for you today. This is Zaf signing out.